Right, so here we go. Unscripted, raw, authentic. It's like a piece of art. It's just going to come together. No planning, just going to go with the flow. So I wanted to share with you the stuff that I've been working on for the last 20 odd years. I would probably say my whole life's work. But this is for me, this has been the key. And what kind of really brought all this together was the advent of AI and its potential and where I think it's headed. And I feel like we already have an AI system in place, but it's not an artificial intelligence, it's the intelligence which orchestrates the entire creation. And what I wanted to share with you was, how do you, one, access that intelligence, that infinite intelligence, and two, how do you then use that in your life to make your life more effective, efficient, and fulfilling. So I'm going to use my whiteboard just to kind of go through a few concepts, but I've seen this, I've experienced some of this in action, and as I'm using these principles more, life's seeming to reciprocate, shall we say, and things are getting better, and I'm feeling more fulfilled and more peaceful, and it seems to be a refinement process, and I think it will go to infinity if we assume that the creation is infinite. Anyway, so let's begin. Imagine, so first off, so one of the fundamental problems of life is we're constantly making decisions. So how do you decide what the best decision is? And you can only make a decision based on the information you've got at that moment in time. So I'm going to kind of jump around here a little bit because I think it'll be useful. So let's go for blue. So imagine like a central intelligence here. I'm going to call it intelligence. I'm going to call it infinite intelligence. If you've read a series of books called The Law of One, that term is used in that. So this, you could imagine this almost a bit like an infinite database of information, and that contains information from different life forms, different dimensions of existence. We're going to stick to our human experience in this case. So let's assume this contains things like, let's go for the red here. So we've got the 5 senses. So I'm just going to write them all out here because I think it's useful to see. Oops, not thoughts yet. That's one that's later. So let's have sight, which is the most obvious. So that's light, yeah, speed of light. We've got sound, which is vibration. We've got, let's go touch next, which is kind of the other one that's one that draws us in the most. Smell, sight, sound, touch, smell, and then taste. Yeah, so all that feeds in to this intelligence. Yeah, gathering information from the outside world. Yeah. Now on this intelligence, where does it get all this information from? So imagine you've got, I'm just going to do it as that. Imagine this here represents 8 billion humans, which I think is the current population, global population. And then you've got like other species, you know, let's put here other life forms on planet Earth. Obviously then we can take this out to other planets, other galaxies, other solar systems, etc., etc. But let's stick to this for now. You're starting to get the idea here. Now each human has those 5 senses, but we also have, let's go here, you've got thoughts as well, in the form of images, concepts, ideas, yeah. You've got emotions and feelings. I'm keeping this as simple as possible for now, just so you get the kind of overarching theme of of this idea. Emotions and feelings, and then you've got like intuitions, etc. I mean, you've got psychic ability and many other things upon that, and there'll be more to uncover as we evolve as a species. We'll uncover more capabilities, more information that will feed into this infinite intelligence. But yeah, that's all going into, it's all feeding this. Yeah, but this is also a feedback loop, so it's a bi-directional process because it's connected. So it's experiencing itself through itself. So it creates these. I like to call these humans like nodes. If you imagine like the internet is multiple like devices connected through an infrastructure, and signals are sent back and forth. And the internet is not just one particular machine; it's the entire collective network. So let's now imagine the advent of AI. Where's AI going? So AI potentially is a system that is going to self-evolve. It's going to use information from experience, and it's going to use that experience to evolve. The more it experiences, the more it evolves, the faster it evolves. The more nodes it has, i.e. the more humans it has, the more for AI, obviously it's technology, it's devices, it's going to evolve faster. So if it's only got one device to learn through, it's going to evolve at the rate of one device. But if I bring in 8 billion devices, then the evolution is going to happen much faster. Obviously there's pros and cons to this because we live in a dual universe. We have a positive polarity and a negative polarity. I'm going to get to the bit with all this at the end of how this then applies to our life and how it can help us individually, and then how that links to it helping us collectively. So so you've got all this information feeding in. AI will, let's go back to the AI concept, the AI frame of reference. So AI, with all these devices, takes this information and it evolves, it gets faster, etc. The question to ask is, what if our bodies are where AI would naturally evolve to, i.e. the biological system? And we've evolved over billions of years, or this planet has, according to my own understanding and what's out there. So let's go off that. Let's use that as our assumption. So we've evolved over many, many, many years. So through that, what if that's what's going on here? There's this central intelligence, this infinite intelligence, call it whatever you like. Some people might want to call it God, but what if that intelligence is evolving itself so it can experience itself in all these infinite number of ways, and it's just continually expanding and evolving, and it's got us to this point here. Now what I think's happened is with the body, I think so if we go to here, we've got the 5 senses, and then we've got, so I call that the outer world, and we perceive the outer world through these senses. Information's going in and out, and then we've got our inner world, which is private to us individually. I believe what I think's happened is we've somehow severed our connection. Not in reality. I don't think we can do that in reality. I think we've limited our connection. We've chosen to not look at certain things. Either we're blocked in some sort of way, or we're choosing to either consciously or unconsciously ignore the information coming to us from that infinite intelligence. So 2 things here. If we're open and we're receiving, so how does 8 billion humans coordinate themselves efficiently, effectively, so everything just works like clockwork? Well, this intelligence here has all the information that it needs, right? This knows everything because that's where all the information is being fed. But if we look at one human mind, or let's say even, let's go to a company of something like the NHS, let's say it's got, I think it's like 92,000 staff. Let's take those 92,000 brains. That's still less than the amount of information that's held in here. So imagine this central intelligence is feeding constantly the perfect information, moment by moment, to each of these nodes to let it know what it needs to do for that very specific moment. So it's almost like what needs to happen is this node needs to surrender its ego mind, which is, you might call like the local mind, to the higher mind, so that it's getting guided from this higher intelligence, which can see more, which knows more. So the information coming from here is more reliable than, say, just the information that's down here. And if we tune into this, we don't then need to be straining ourselves. We don't need to, constantly be reading books or stressing out about whether you're doing something right or wrong. Because once the ego, if we're only listening to egoic mind, which is the smaller mind, which is useful because that takes the information from here. Let's say the ego mind can handle, I don't know, I'm going to just make this up. Let's say it can handle a gigabyte of data, right? But this infinite intelligence has got infinite amounts of data storage. Let's just say it's an infinite amount. Obviously, the 1 gig mind here cannot handle infinite data, but it can handle 1 gig's worth of data for now. Okay, I am going to assume later down the line that our biology can evolve, and it will evolve. I do believe that. I believe we'll get better as humans, even our bodies will change, etc., etc. But let's go with where we are now, because as we know, we only ever live in the now moment. We only ever experience the now moment. So going off the now, so 1 gig of data comes in, but are we using that 1 gig of data? Are we actually paying attention to all this information coming in? Because even though infinite intelligence has all this information, it will feed us what we can handle in the form of information coming through this lot up here. Now, if I'm not paying attention to my inner world, or even some of my outer world, then there's information that I'm not able to then utilize to make the next step. So if I'm go over here, let's use a different color, just because I can. If I'm here, let's call that where I am in my life now, and I need to make a decision whether I'm going to go A, B, C. Let's make it more like real life. You tend to have quite a lot of options. And F, let's go for that. How do I decide? Well, we can be rational about it. We can think about it all day, which is fine. I'm using thought. Great, use thought. But am I using all the other ones? Emotion, feelings, intuitions, sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. Now, sometimes they're not all relevant because we might not need them in making a decision. But if I'm open to all of those and I'm aware of all of those, then I've got more information to make a more informed choice about what to do here. And that goes for the next moment. So if I choose B, for example, there's going to be a whole host of other choices. And choices moment to moment are almost infinite. Okay, so going back to this, so if I'm going to use all this information, more informed choices, the better. If I'm closed off, then I can't make as many choices. Now, sometimes what supersedes what I see, I'm going to use the word love here because it's how I see it. Sometimes we could use all this information, all this lot here, but something can supersede all of that. And I think what this infinite intelligence is of the nature of love. It knows things. It just, sometimes when we feel love, when we make a decision here, and we use love to decide, it contains so much information, the mind can't handle it and the body can't handle it. As in, it can't contain the full amount, but sometimes you just know, like rational, all this might point to taking option B, but your heart of heart says, go F. So what I think all of this is collectively, and more than this, is love. So love contains so much information that it guides us moment to moment in our life for every single thing that's going to be relevant in terms of our physical growth, mental growth, emotional growth, challenges, experiencing the highs and the lows, lessons about handling finances, about relationships, dealing with pain, health related stuff. Literally everything is covered within the framework of love. Now, this is an understanding. I believe this is what is actually going on. Why do I think that? Because I'm experiencing it. I feel like a lot of this is self-evident if you just pay attention and look into your immediate reality. Enter the super conscious state. What does that mean? It just means pay attention to everything that's going on around you. Just watch what's taking place through the body, within your body, and outside of your body in your outer world, and it'll start to paint a picture as to what's going on. Now, this is like the conductor, this central intelligence, and we're like the musicians. And when we all play in harmony and sync, the world is going to be an absolutely incredible place. So let's say that's the world here. We're playing music. and the music, when we're all synced, when we're all in harmony, the world will be a much better place. So now that tells me that if you look around, if you look at the amount of violence, poverty, crime, bad health, all those kind of things, some of us obviously still out of sync. So how do we get into sync? Well, you don't need to worry about everybody else, which is what I used to do. What I found was I need to get in sync. So if I tune in to infinite intelligence, great. Then the next person might go, oh, how did you do that? And what happens is, by resonance, by the feeling of it, they automatically vibrate at the same frequency. So it's about raising our frequency so that we create this harmony. Because sometimes when you listen to music, when it's out of sync, you can tell. But then you can always hear, if you really be attentive, you can hear when someone is in tune. And then what happens is that person holds steady to that tune, and then everybody else can get into sequence, and the conductor here will be sending out the signals. And that conductor, you could call it whatever you want. I like the word God, so we'll use the word God, or love, infinite intelligence, whatever you want to call it. That could be, in terms of AI, that would be like the artificial intelligence central database. If you watched the Terminator before, the Terminator films, that would be like Skynet. It would have all that information. But we're not seeing this in a negative light. I'm seeing this in a positive light. There's always that potential for it to go, wrong. And if we look around, yeah, it can go wrong. That's fine. It's just because we're out of sync. But what happens when we get in sync? I believe it will play out beautifully on planet Earth, and it will reflect in our world. Another way to look at this is, imagine 8 billion jigsaw pieces. If those pieces decide to be themselves, they start to fit, and we end up creating like a jigsaw puzzle that works. But if I try to be somebody else and I'm not listening to this connection here, then I cut that, and then I end up going just off my ego mind, and I'm not listening to this. I create a barrier there. It's like I'm like cutting myself off from the internet. I'm turned off the Wi-Fi, as an example. It means I can't communicate my device with the external world. I just need to switch it back on. That's all. It's always there. I just need switching back on. So then I'm using ego mind, and it means that I'm not in line. So my job is to get myself online, moment to moment to moment, and always trust that. And we'll get better at doing that, and we'll be able to hone it. I've noticed in my life, I've been able to tune in. I found it easier to tune in. I don't need to plan. I still plan, but the plan's not coming through the ego mind. It's coming from this intelligence. It's like everything's there. I just know. You just know. It's hard to explain because it's beyond the mind, you see, because that's the whole point. That this ego mind is just a container. It doesn't create. It receives. So the ego mind receives. If you followed Bashar before, you'll know what I'm talking about here. But basically, the ego mind is like a container. It receives information. But this infinite intelligence is what sends that information to here. Now, if I'm not using this information, then that information is not going out, and it's not being used. So then intelligence can't send me any more information. So I need to go through a process of growth. There's a step-by-step process, right? And the process for me is going to be a different process to everybody else. So you've got to follow your own process. That process comes through the empty mind. So the Buddhists call it a no mind. And what I interpret that as is, you empty the mind so that you can receive. Empty the cup so you can receive new information, and keep emptying the cup. So you receive information, use it to take you to step 2, to then step 3, to then step 4, and so on, and etc., etc. So what happens is life works synchronistically. It works effortlessly, easily, lovingly, joyfully. And then we will end up where we're meant to end up, within this ever-changing tapestry, and it's moving. So even though it's one thing interacting with itself, it's moving, it's evolving, it's changing, but it's always going to be perfect. And we'll start moving away from the darker times and moving to the age of light, the age of enlightenment, the age of love, etc. And who knows where this is going to go. So with my clients, what I do is I just vibrate at my frequency. So when they're in the room with me, so let's say this is me over here, they decide to come along, I'm vibrating at my frequency. Yeah. Hopefully I vibrate at such a level that it kind of opens up their if they've got a block around them, it starts to weaken the block, break the block. Their fears start to disappear. Their idea of limitation starts to disappear. And then eventually they're vibrating at a higher frequency. Yeah, because I need to work on myself. That's all I can do. And by resonance, by being in proximity, they start to, like a strong magnet will draw somebody in. They vibrate at the high frequency, and then it ripples out into the rest of the world. But that person can then go and do the same thing. And what happens is, as we start to, as if I'm playing the drums and I'm in sync with the music sheet, somebody else plays the drums and they're in sync with the music sheet, and we're both in sync, it gets louder, right? Louder and louder and louder and louder. And that's what it means to raise planetary frequency or planetary consciousness. So yeah, in a nutshell, somewhat long video, but I hope you enjoyed it. I'll probably post a few more, maybe, who knows, we'll see what comes. I'm going to be focusing on my frequency, so stay tuned for some more.